Hey Derek, it's Richard. So this is the video that I've got. This as the main video, but sometimes I put a photograph. But I've got the video on there at the moment. It's just a little bit of a kind of. It's some drone footage I got of the area, but it's only got the central site in there. The other sites are sort of known about, but people aren't really switched on to how they all fit together, and some people don't realise that they're all part of the same complex. One of the sites has been built on. It was officially recognised at some point, but it ended up getting houses built on it because like urban development gradually snuck up on it. This is the text that I've got with it. Now, when you get down to updates there, here's one update, but and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little bar there and it says more updates. So you click on that, but these are in reverse order. These are the newest ones first, and so if you need to, it kind of won't make sense unless you start from the beginning, really. So you keep scrolling down until it says more updates, and you just got to keep expanding it because I've been adding more and more information. It's all information about the area, about the issues, and as I've actually, because I've spent almost my life driving around the country and I've been to a lot of sites. Kind of spent most of my life touring around England, and now that I'm back at home, I've actually had a chance to think about and contemplate the sites we've got here, and that's when I've actually been reading about things and learning more, and obviously filling the gaps in with other sites that people post and go to. There's loads of sites that I didn't know existed, and that's on the Facebook groups you find out about them. So, for example, there's Old Oswestry, right? And there's Maiden Castle, and this is a hill, which is near another hill, the hill fort that's known about. This is another one near it, and it used to be recognised as an ancient site, and then they kind of just like ended up forgetting about it. That's the old photograph, and then they ended up building on it and around it, and there were issues to do with why that happened, and I go into that in the story, and you'll see that it's aligned. If you look at the top left corner of Old Oswestry, this is the exact same zoom and alignment. You'll see that it's pointing in the same direction. Now, it could have been bigger and it could have been dug out, and there are reasons why that might have happened as well, and when it might have happened. There's still more updates. You kind of got to go back through them all, and then I go on to subjects about the cairns and how they tie into it. Because this is the site from the side, and I've got a strong case for it actually being a long barrow, but not like the long barrows that you go inside. A long barrow that is occupied actually on it because it's so big. And I've even got a case for it being the centre of the long barrows. All the other long barrows based on the shape and the symbology actually, and this being the centre of it. And then going to the place in the island it is and the arrangement of these and where they are in context of the Pennine Hills. And then my latest updates, I've been comparing it to Newgrange and the fact that they're all circular and ours are all elongated, and the whole area is named after the Brigantes and the Brig House and the god Bridget, and it means an elongation or a pole or a pier. And actually, long barrows in a way are elongations, and also when you have a staff or a pole, it is. And I actually think I'm getting onto the fact now where I've got a strong case for the Celtic god bridge. See, this is how it's been built up now. It's horrible that they've built up. That valley to the left is where it flies through on the drone, which is left beautiful. Look at how majestic it is. And it's all got all the surrounding valley and the Pennines in the background. And there are reasons how and why it ended up getting built up. And it's all to do with the Imperial Chemical Industries and the Victoria Tower, and then the Emily Moore Mast getting built. And I think that's the picture for the very first update I put. and I've put it an introduction to the area, and then from there working back, I've added quite a lot of updates now. Now there is a couple of other petitions about this, but they're not really with that much information. And one of them we got to 3,500 signatures, which was enough for full council, but it's not going in the way that we want it to go. We've also got the river as well, which they used to use these longboats on the river. These are some in Ireland that they found. And on the latest update, which is the picture that I've just showed us now, it's got connections to the moor. It's on the edge of the moors, and Marsden actually used to be spelled Morden. There's even some. I've got evidence for Tolkien being in the area and basing a lot of the Rings things on this, like Mordor and the Tower, because we've got the Tower and the sort of hills. There's a lot to talk about. That's where the river is. And that's the first site, and then as you're going along the river, there's another, and then another. And they're all large long barrow shape, and then you've actually got the Pennine Ridge. And the actual shape of one of them is sort of like the Liberty cap shape, not unlike the bit that's meant to interlock on the inside of the Stonehenge things. And the area as well, it used to be called Elmet. So we have to go into Elmet and helmets and the shape of the Celtic helmet, and I've got lots of evidence for that. The shape of the Celtic helmets and the word Elmet, and as well as Brigantes, and I get the latest updates is which there's just a photo I've shown you, which is just a basic kind of simplified picture of Newgrange, Knowth, and Dowth. They're all circular shaped, with the little kind of baby hills around the central one at Knowth, and all on the top side of the river. And then our three sites are spaced out a little bit further, but are all elongated, and they're next to the Pennine Hills. And both the Newgrange sites with the river flowing out in the same direction to the sea is set out essentially in terms of the island. If you look at the whole island itself, in the same context that our sites are, and at the exact same height and level as well as ours, although it's a little bit of a longer journey to the ocean, it's the equivalent river. And I think that our sites, it being Brigantes and Bridget and Poles and Mass, and also you've got the bridges that go up to the Cranogs as well in Scotland, it's a lot to describe, and the evidence to it is mainly symbolic evidence, and it's mainly comparative evidence, and it's mainly evidence of symbolic meaning. But I think it all fits. And the fact that you've got a lot of long barrows around England that are long, and you've got a lot of round barrows like Uli, which is female shaped, and then because you've got the Sheen and the Gig that's female, and then you've got on the Isle of Man you've got the ones as well. I think there are two classes and categories in shape of the sites. You've got the male shaped site and you've got the female shaped site. Now, if we can agree that the largest of the sites is likely to be the headquarters of that type of site, and in Ireland you've got three massive sites all in close proximity, so there's definitely some sort of headquarters going on there. So if that could be seen as the central order for all around shaped sites, it would be likely that if there was a central order for the round shaped sites, that would be it, even though you've got them in Ireland, England and Scotland. And if there was a centre of the long barrow elongated shaped sites like Belasnat, West Kennet, and the ones in Scotland and around, there would be a centre for the male-shaped ones, which, I believe there's a strong case for it in our area, because it's very, very similar in position on the island and the type of place it is on the island, in the same direction of river setup, basically. that's what I'm getting into now. I'm just getting into it now. And then you've got some of these have inside them, like at Brincelli, Degou, and on Guernsey, you've got some of these actually have the stone elongated like mini obelisk inside them, which is phallic shaped in a way, and it also is a pole or mast shape. So it fits all the words and descriptions for Brigantes and Bridget, which is mast pier. It basically means elongated shape, but it means to project outwards. It actually means, because it's hard to translate some Celtic words, because Celtic words have slightly different meaning to how we normally have language, and I've actually got some Celtic videos for that. Instead of like something's been stolen, they say was there. So the word for an rob, it's an rob. It means was there was something there, but now it's not there anymore. So this Bridget, it is actually speaking about a projection and elongation, which is where you get a pier projects out, or a pole projects out, or a mast or a walkway projects out. The long barrows are an elongation. So also consciousness itself projects out and beams out, you know. We know the Druids are known to have carried staffs, and I actually think that it was misconstrued, and this might be kind of pushing it a little bit, but I'm going to put a case together for it, which is that when St. Patrick went over to Ireland, you know, to drive the snakes out of Ireland and to get rid of the pagan culture, really, that was what he wanted to do and bring Christianity in. I actually think that the Celtic god Bridget is actually male, a deity, and I think that at some point they branded it a female and they started recording and saying it was female, because the Celts never wrote anything down. So, and if you look on the Book of Kells, one of the pictures, I've got the picture in one of the updates, because I do an entire video on that. Because giving arms to give arms, or arms as in armour, it is a word and term. We've actually got the Royal Armoury in Leeds as well, funnily enough, which is, you know, it's the main city in our area. So the word Almondbury is the main place next to one of the sites, Almondbury, and it gets its names from arms. This is it. You see this character, if you've been meditating on the picture, it has got a long barrow shape underneath it here, and it is an elongation, you know, and he's actually bridging his arm out, and that also there kind of looks like a small bow anyway. This picture can be viewed upside down, and it actually appears as if it's got the antlers on the stag, you know, like on the Sununaros thing, but this way around, it's a little bit different. I've also had to do quite a few videos on Dennis McKenna and Terence McKenna and the Imperial College that are doing all the studies on, like, you know, the old sacraments like psilocybin and things like that, which is an entire field of study altogether, a separate field of study, but it has a connection. So there are a lot of things to cover, and it's literally like putting it all together. So, I mean, we've even got Robin Hood's grave near here, and it's kind of difficult to show it in just one small picture. They've even got the county borderline for Yorkshire and from Kirklees in Calderdale's even got an elongation on it where it goes out. But you'd have to go onto that update there and read what I've put about it and listen to the video. And not everyone's going to agree with these theories that I'm putting out and these proposals, but I'm quite certain about them, and it would answer. It all would just fit together and would answer a lot of fill a lot of the information in about the things that we do know. You know, why even the Isle of Man's got its name Isle of Man. So it's kind of it could be seen as a bit of a bold theory, really, but I think people know about it already. There are lots of themes in Star Trek, which I could go into in great detail from Kirk, because we've got Kirk at the site of Castle Hill, and even the symbology of the spaceship and things like that. And then it clearly, now we've got Sir Patrick Stewart, who's from Huddersfield, you know, and they've even built the university there, which is kind of like a big spaceship. And the actual site here, when you're on it, De Lacy, after 1066, reshaped the fortifications and he made it into like a big ship. It's actually like being on a big boat. And it's like Enterprise is a starship. That's more modern things about it. But then there are some mountains and some stone circles near as well that I've not even got into those yet. So it's basically this. It's an adventure and an investigation, and it's an entire story. It's literally like, basically, I'm having to cover the whole legacy of the area, and there's a lot of modern occurrences, modern events, reasons why they might have built the ICI, Imperial Chemical Industries, at the end of here, which is going from the large hill fort structure to the river, it's only a tiny bit longer than it is from Newgrange to the river. But these sites are not entered. These sites, you dwell on them, you occupy the top of them, and them being elongated and long, like long barrows, but huge ones. If you think of the male organ, you don't enter it. It is the thing that doesn't. The female one is the thing that you go inside. It's well known why Uli Longbarrow is called Hetty Pegler's Tuft, really. So I think these three sites that are actually lived on top of, people don't recognise them or aren't as curious about them because the other sites are so interesting with the carvings and you actually go inside it. It's really, really very mystical to some people. That's why I think a lot of the long barrows that are just a long barrow burial without any entrance or without any interesting stones there also kind of fall a bit into the mundane. But as soon as you get to West Kenny and to Stony Littleton and to Bella Snap, I mean, Bella Snap's got a false entrance at the front. You don't go inside it, but it has got an entrance. Only the sides. Now, I know that this theory, you might say, well, if these are massive long barrows that you don't go inside, you live on top of, how can you go into the other long barrows? And if they're elongated and the female ones, you go inside those around. Well, I think there's a little bit of crossover between them at some point to do with learning about certain things, studying the human body's energies, the psychology of the human, the emotion of the human, even feel. Animals know where north is. We know that's a fact in some animals in the brains, and I think the humans have got an ability to sense that, and I think that you can train that ability, possibly practice and enhance it. And there are some theories for the long barrows with resistance, like if you lay across a long room, that you can feel slight resistance to the energy flowing through it and things like that, like Bella Snap. That's all to go into. It deserves its own subject, which is why it's just hard to kind of put it in one little paragraph or in one picture what this whole thing is about, our sites. So you end up having to go into talking about all of them, and then it's literally ends up being the patchwork quilt of all the sites. It's then unavoidable to say, right, well, how do all the sites tie together and how do they all fit together? And then you're going into the latest Megalithomania video by Howard Crowhurst. Then, you know, he's got his alignments of the longitude and latitude of like Karnak and the Rudstone and Castlerig, and they all line up perfectly with Marlborough Hill and Silbury Hill and the French sites. And he's saying, how can this possibly like be perfect alignment over great distance? And they must have been able to. Well, you watch the Howard Crowhurst on Megalithomania, Sacred Geometry, and then you've got Gail Higginbottom goes into all the Spanish cairns and how they're perfectly aligned to the sunrise and how they're all exactly spaced out over Spain. So when you get onto one ridge and see one, you can see the other one like right on the horizon in the distance. I guess eventually this is going to be the theory of all of it. this is actually going to turn into the theory of everything. All of the stone circles, all of the long barrows, all the cairns, Stonehenge, with our sites and Newgrange and the Scottish recumbent stone circles. It's actually going to have to end up being the big picture of all of it, with the stone circles and how they fit into it. That's what it's going to end up being. And I've had to get onto that from finding out about our site and what it means, and which other sites correspond to it, and you know, and then you get into the Celtic gods as well, which I'm just trying to concentrate on the sites at the moment. I'm kind of struggling now to fit everything in, but I kind of need to get people interested in it and want to look through all these, and if they can put up with me, you know. I am from Yorkshire, and I know that I think we've got the latest Doctor Who is from Yorkshire, and apparently the viewing figures were at the highest when they switched over to her, because apparently West Yorkshire people aren't always the most popular. So, you know, my presentation sometimes can be a bit full on, but that's just character. That at the end of the day, I've kind of got to be me, I suppose. So, you know, it might not be for some people, but it's about trying to get the wider. It's looking into the wider picture of the whole thing, basically, the entire map. I mean, they call it the megalithic map, don't they? So I've actually, you know, studied our site and started talking about it and what's important about it, and it's inevitably ended up being everything, all the sites, and how they all fit together. And I think that this is one of, not like the centre of centres, but I think this is one place, a central organisation of part of it that was highly significant and important. And I do think that people know about it. I do think the authorities sort of know about it, and a lot of the experts, but they don't let on they know as much about it as they say they do. And I think there has been various reasons through history, like with the Jubilee Tower being put on there, with them lighting bonfires on one of them, and then they built the Imperial Chemical Industries. Tolkien was inspired by other areas, including ours, in his book, and then got the massive Emily Moor Mast, you know, when they got the tower in that, and there's like the place Mordor, and you know, he puts Mordor in his book, and we had Morden for Marsden, and there's a lot to take in on it with all the Star Trek stuff and that. It might take some convincing for some people who aren't kind of open to it, but I think it's interesting. The only thing is, not a lot of people have been to these sites, and not a lot of people know about them, because all of the viewing points where you get good visual access from a perspective that puts it into context has been neglected and ignored by the council and by the authorities. So it's not really been encouraged to view it in that context. And with the building and development that's gone on, it has obstructed that context and visual access to it. And unfortunately, it's fallen out of memory. And even a lot of the terms and meanings have fallen out of memory, particularly that site there. They used to call it the Warrior Tomb. The locals used to know it, and it used to be significant and important, and now it's ended up falling under urban sprawl, and I think that's a bit sad, and that's one of the issues that I've raised in the campaign, that I think it could do with rewilding and restoring, and it's there's a lot to try and explain to you, and it's finding the right pictures to show you, and the right diagrams to show you, and the right you know, I'm not the best writer ever, so, you know, I firmly believe that I understand it and interpret it correctly, but it's, you know, not being the best wordsmith is, you know, kind of, it's getting it put down, and I'm just putting it down in the best way that I know how, which is getting information and putting information and putting information and putting all the pieces together, really, you know. But to explain it as briefly as I can, we've got three very big sites that are in close proximity, significant proximity enough for them to be connected, because like Shanktonbury Hill and Cissbury Hill, you've got two hill forts that are worthing on the coast within local proximity together, and that's what these proximity are. So, you know, it's just about building on it and hoping that people get interested in and hoping that really maybe I could, if I had money, I would pay someone else to do it. You know, if I had £1,000, I'd pay Hugh Newman to do it. You know, he makes brilliant videos and he's a great, you know, he's a great presenter. You know, I really, I could do with getting someone like Hugh Newman to do a video on it and sending him all information and having a meeting with him so he can understand it, and then asking him if he'll do the video and if he'll do the talk and if he'll put the proposals on there, because I think he's a lot better person to do it than me, because I ain't really got the presenting skills, you know. And unfortunately, there are a lot of issues tied in with it they're close to the bone, and you're getting on to kind of like, you know, some people may not be too keen on these issues or having to raise them, but for a proper evaluation and assessment about the situation there and what's going on, it can't be made, because it affects. I mean, for example, there was an old 1700s pub on there that got pulled down, and everyone's annoyed about it in the local area because they've got memories there. So that 1/3 of the locals aren't really keen on supporting anything either way because they're upset about that. And then you've got the other third or whatever percentage that are really a bit obsessed with that Victoria Tower on there, which is a royal implantation, and they just want to take photos of that Victoria Tower, and that's all they really like about it. And then you've got the other percentages, the people who appreciate its Iron Age settlement and its prehistory and know that there is something more to it in the context of the entire surrounding landscape, the river, the other three sites, and the moorland, and are open to interpreting it and looking at it as, you know, and saying, okay, then, you know, let's hear it, you know, actually showing interest in it, basically, other than kind of quite a narrow-minded view on it. I think people do sort of have a notion about it, but I think that with all the distractions of modern-day life, it's hardly like Uffington Camp and the White Horse at the moment, which are purely untainted, and it's all countryside. People love going for walks on the Ridgeway. They've got the White Horse. They've got the little Longbarrow, Wayland Smithy. Then there's the Dragon Hill, which is round and smooth now with nothing on it. You wouldn't have known that there was anything on it, which is kind of what the state of one of these hills is in, similar to that, but just a bigger version. And then you got the Uffington Camp, which is the hill fort, you know, and there are absolutely loads of people who've got deep, deep passion, and I love them. They are the most amazing people, and you know, in that Ridgeway group, they love long barrows, they love stone circles, they love the walks, you know, and they're fantastic people, but people tend to have a pride for their own area, and they've got a pride for the prehistory and the Iron Age heritage of that area, and they look after it. In our area, it's ended up getting piled up with this layering, this almost like, that tower on there is almost like an elongated Battenberg cake stood on end, you know, with a cross in the centre of it, and unfortunately, there is the celebration of the Jubilee, which intersects and distracts fellowship and pursuit of study of the ancient history there before that. And then you've got the pub with all the local kind of more trendy modern people who are just interested in going out and drinking and memories of them growing up. The nostalgia basically prevails them, and they end up just being disgruntled over the pub getting knocked down, and they kind of, so in a way the local people have ended up being divided on this site and on the surrounding site, really, whereas like Uffington, it's an Oxfordshire site, you know, it's between Swindon and Oxford, it's got that, it's still just about grouped in the Oxfordshire area, so it's sort of claimed as, it does get, I think it gets branched in with, you know, the outer realms of the Oxford area, and having a long barrow with a hill fort, with the White Horse, with the Dragon Hill, with the Ridgeway Walk, It's just got that, it's got a big following. We've got walks, we've got the Pennine Ridgeway and the Walkers, but it's not got that, retain that mystical connection to this site and to the other two sites and the river due to the permissions that were given to the urban development and the visual access that has been blocked off and withdrawn, like from certain places, like at the Freemasons' Arms and things like that. And it's just for its significance and true importance and meaning, unfortunately, has been undermined. And instead, more modern institutions like the Imperial Chemicals Industry Factory and like the Royal Armouries at Leeds and then Limor Mast, and then even the whole Star Trek Enterprise thing, the entire the Star Trek legacy really itself even kind of maybe even overshadows it with Patrick Stewart. So it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of been it's been vandalised and it's been split up, and the local people have ended up being pitted sort of against each other in a way, and that's a bit upsetting. But I think there's enough evidence that this is something like Newgrange, Noth and Doth, but it's not three large passage temples or passage sites, tombs, whatever you want to call them, that you go inside that are round shape. It is three large long barrow shape bases that are on the edge of the Pennine Ridge and have the river flow past them, not unlike the Brunner Boyne, and they were a base and a large centre for maybe a specific branch of the Druids, or even if you say the Druids are a lot later, well, these are Iron Age, so Druids are still Iron Age, so even if you want to say going all the way back to prehistoric times, it's a central base right in the heart of the island by a main river that goes to the sea, like Newgrange, and there are three significant sites like Newgrange, but these are a little bit different. You don't go inside the site, you go onto the top of it, and there are definitely male and female comparisons there, like obviously the female is entered and the male is not. So, and then once you kind of realise that, you can say, oh, well, we've got loads of small long barrows and small cairns and ule and the other ones spread out all around the edges of the islands, and they are little smaller sites, but some of them you go inside, some of them you don't. Some of them have got monuments and standing stones inside them that are they fit the description of bridge in the Celtic context of it, a projection, an elongation, a mast, a post, and those they've got an interactive role within that site, in the Guernsey site and in the Anglesey one, and they might well have been inside some of the others as well. Now, I know that very site is not. I know Ule is a round shape, and I know the one at Guernsey. Then at that stage, I think you get on to, okay, then what? Come on, let's get some theories out for what these sites are actually for. And Howard Crowhurst says that he doesn't think that they were all for burials, and he's a leading expert on it. And some of them are definitely burials, right? But some of them are temples, and some of them that get confused as burials when they're actually more like local temples and chapels. So there's a lot to go for. A lot of them haven't survived, But I would really like to start getting into, with everyone actually. I'd really like starting to put a good theory for the whole thing together, for the entire thing, the whole patchwork quilt of it all. I'd like to get a theory for all of it. And I think they travelled around. I don't think you can study the stars and navigation by stars if you aren't putting it into practice, because you go somewhere, like whether it's Avebury or whether it's somewhere else or Carnac or wherever you want to start off, and to study travelling by the stars and the constellations, and if you can orientate yourself with the star positions and with the sun. You need to put it into practice. You need to do some travelling and then see if you go off course or not, and see, and you can't just do that by going to short distance. You want to be travelling long distances, and then that would, Howard Crowhurst then would be right on the money with that. He'd be bang on, and then all those perfect alignments, longitude and latitude that he's found out, then he's on it. He's definitely bang on it with that. And then that at least would say, right, well, these people weren't just staying in one place, or at least the Druid Order weren't. They were doing a lot of travelling. And then if you say that, then at one time of the year when the moon's in a certain place, you could say they were going to be up by the recumbent stones, and then at another time of year, when the sun's at a certain thing, you could say, well, then they've travelled to Stonehenge. These people were meant to study for 10 to 20 years, so we're told, maybe even longer. It might have been a lifetime of study, but, some people, I'm not the best person to present it, and I admit that I'm not the best person to present it, but I'd like to speak to some people who are good at presenting it, like the prehistory guys, like Hugh Newman, like Howard Crowhurst, like Gail Higginbottom, people like that who I admire, and really, I think they're right. I like their work, and the thing is, when they're doing a talk, I'm watching it and I'm going, well, that's what I thought. So if I'm thinking that when they do a presentation and I'm thinking, well, that's what I thought as well, or I agree, then surely when I'm thinking about some of these other things, then surely if they think like me, then surely, the things that I'm saying about it have got to have some substantial potential for being right as well, and it's just getting into a place or position where you can get to meet the right people, get talking to the right people, or get them focused on it, and then you can start kind of, knocking it back and forward and make some progress with it, That's what I'd really like to do. And I'm open to people saying, I don't think you're right about it for this reason or that reason, and I'm happy and eager to discuss that and the facts they put forward and point out, what I think about what their counter argument is and things like that, so that's where I am with it at the moment.